because this is my first solo exhibition.
Yay!
So I will go home and I will remember each of you that are here because this is the first one, and I'm thankful that you're here to share this with me. So thank you.
Good job, yay!
I'm Sara Lee Hughes, and I have met a few of you, since being here or on the coming to get work, but also from 3 years ago at the 2022 exhibit tour. It's wonderful to be back in Wausau. I am originally from Dallas, Texas, and see, here we go already. So I'm originally from Dallas, and my paintings are representational narratives that highlight my experience growing up in the 1970s and the 1980s in Texas with divorced parents. My mom was straight, or my mom is straight, she's still living, and my dad was gay, and he is no longer with us. And so my work is centered on my experience and also navigating, or it's highlights of moments, memories, and ideas that mark a journey, if you will, navigating through the differences between my mom and my dad, and also just their generation, their expectations of their generation, or the expectations of their generation upon them, and the expectations of my generation upon myself. And by that, I mean, they were definitely of a generation, I was saying this earlier to Heather, that children are heard, children are heard and not seen. That's not the way that goes. Children are seen and not heard. You'll see a lot of things that kind of lean towards that type of generation in Keeping Up with the Joneses, all the Southern colloquialisms that I use throughout the work, and just what that journey was, and I'm getting a bit off, so we're just going to lay that down now. But what that journey was, because it wasn't, say, the norm or the ideal. It wasn't, a mom and a dad. It was so different. And so that's what my work is about. And it's about this experience that I've had. Okay, so I will pick it up again. We're just going to do this for a little bit. So my journey into the art world began with making things. I was a big maker as a kid. I don't really have any major memories of doing extraordinary paintings or painting for any type of painting. I was into paper mache. I remember doing weaving projects, carving wood, but making three-dimensional objects. I did make a small model of the Globe Theater in 5th grade. So those are the kinds of things where I come from when I was really little. In high school, I did costumes and props for musicals at high school. I still love musicals, and I was really active in the productions at Woodrow Wilson in Dallas. It wasn't until I got to college, and I went to college for theater, and it wasn't until I got to college that I really kind of got introduced to art. And it was a bit of a path. It was a bit of a journey in the beginning. I went for acting. Acting is very intangible, and I missed that tangible creation, making something. So I changed my degree to design, and the costume design, the set design, the lighting design, that all interested me. That all introduced me to art history, architecture, and figure drawing. And it wasn't until I was working on large scenic backdrops that I was like, oh, this is painting. And I loved it. And from there, I made my way to Philadelphia, and I worked as a scenic for television and film until a friend introduced me, didn't introduce me, but turned me on to PAFA, which is the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. And I was like, okay, this is where I need to go next. I wanted to be able to make the switch from doing this large work for television and film to doing studio work, and to learn classical, traditional techniques in oil painting, printmaking, sculpture, and drawing. And so that's what I did. And so then that journey led me to New York, where I continued to work as a scenic. And while in New York, I got to work with a lot of different people. And I had made a promise to myself out of PAFA, whatever job I got, or actually whatever job I went out for, it needed to be something that involved paint. And I mean, I worked a lot of wacky jobs. I was a scenic once for a commercial, and I mean, we detailed a car. I never detailed a car. I got to work in all of these different facets that you don't really think of painters working in. And when I got to New York, I got to be a studio assistant to just a brilliant man, Greg Barnes. He's a Tony Award-winning Broadway costume designer, and I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with Kinky Boots or Drowsy Chaperone, but those are his designs. I worked on Jane's Carousel, and that was the restoration of these beautiful, this beautiful 1920s carousel, and that's in Dumbo, so if you ever go to New York, definitely go check out Jane's Carousel. So all of these jobs really have fed into the work that I do now, and I ended up coming back to Texas in 2008. I consider myself a full-time artist, although I don't necessarily work every day in the studio. I do teach, I offer summer camps, I teach privately, and I'm a mom. So that all of that gets filtered in to be able to do all of this. So, how does all this start? The work starts with usually an abstract idea, a concept or a question, and then it moves on to how do I paint that? For keeping up with the Joneses, that's a solocial. That's crazy, but kind of cool. That is a Southern colloquialism, and it's not just Southern, but it's something that I heard a lot growing up. Keeping up with the Joneses. That has been in my mind for a long time, and I was like, how do I paint that? There are other works that some people have mentioned because you've seen them before at either exhibit tour or you're familiar with the work. What will the neighbors think? But things start out as this abstract, and then I really work on that in terms of how do I paint that? How do I take that to a two-dimensional surface? And what is that going to look like? So many of the works you see here are I want to say the plants. There's got to be a better word for this. But they're the plants that have grown from seeds that I planted a long time ago. So it starts from this abstract, and the question is, how do I paint that? I'm going to skip around a bit. That's how it starts, and we're going to kind of move into some of the processes I use to get the paintings going. And I'm going to look at this one more time. I knew this was going to happen because I've gotten a bit off course. Okay. So the work is really influenced by my theatrical experience. So I really look at when I'm going to start a painting and get it going. One of the things I do is I really take a director's sense. How am I going to costume it? What is the environment? What is the lighting? How am I going to put all of this together? Because some of them really do act as, or at least I hope that they really act as, these scenes from a larger play. And I've often made the joke that right before I go and I leave this earth, if we line them all up, they'll be the play of my life. You know, they'll tell the entire story. So the theater has a lot to do with it. And I will often stage the scenes, or as much of the scene as I can. This is a great example. So at home, I stage myself holding, taking these pictures, holding cakes, taking a picture, being so excited to receive the cake. And I will stage them. This I staged with my daughter. She modeled for all 3 of the girls in Your Dad Is So Gay. My husband stood in for my dad there. I stood in for my dad. And then I stood in for my grandmother and my Aunt Jenna. So in a lot of them, I'll stage it. And then I fill in with research that I have done to fill out the composition. Okay, so here we go. I've got to go back to this. I really wanted to get rid of this, but that'll happen in just a second. So there are elements of pop culture, and I often use that to provide humor. And then there's a sense of nostalgia. Nostalgia is really important to me. I find that it's such a huge thing in Southern culture, nostalgia, and it's what I feel that helps make the work universal. Because of the nostalgia, and I don't know her name, and I guess she's gone now, but even she said earlier, one of the guests said, oh, I feel so connected to this because of the dresses, the jewelry. I remember that, and then there was something else that she remembered too, about the setting of the table. So there is this essence of nostalgia, and I use that to create a familiar. How I get the nostalgia, so color palette from vintage ads, interior house paint, car paint, but everything, all of these palettes are from, they're all vintage, if that makes sense. It's so funny because I'm doing this and then sometimes I'm thinking about this camera and that makes me just a little bit nervous. So I'm just going to be honest with you. There we go. We're making some glutes. Okay. And then to really push the point of nostalgia, of nostalgia, I will also use the colloquialisms as titles. And so there's pop culture, there's nostalgia. Interior house paint, car colors, costuming and props. That'll also throw something definitely towards that nostalgic look. And then the 2 final components to this recipe that I use for making my paintings. And I say recipe because these are all ingredients. It's not a formula. I don't use the same thing every time. But I've just got all of this. It's like I'm kind of Mary Poppins. I've got a bag, and there's a lot in the bag, and I can pull from all these different things to make it work. And the last 2 things are super important. And I was speaking earlier, no, I wasn't. We were talking about cataloging and cataloging imagery. So I save imagery, but even more what I do is I have what I call the book of lists. And I list out, I keep a list of everything that I like from movies, books, quotes, sounds, color patterns, color combination, or patterns, color combinations, just anything that has flipped my skirt, anything that causes me to think further. I also write down things, what is up with this trend? What is up with this? But I keep a list of all of these things, and it's called my list, and it's kind of getting out of hand, but it's so great because it's like this box of lost puzzle pieces. So when I'm working on a work, and there's a hole in it, and it needs some type of an emotional layer, some type of personal layer, I can go to this box and go through my lists, and I'll have something that feeds in, and I'm like, oh, that fits, that's going to make this layer work. There is a painting on my website that I often reference as an example to this. There's a beautiful moment in The King's Speech, the movie The King's Speech. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but Colin, I cannot remember the actor's name, but he plays King George. He is in the speech therapist's office, and he's sitting on a couch, and it's this beautiful wall. And just the way he was caught, I was like, oh, and that's written out in this list. And I knew then when I saw it that one day, a portrait, something I would do, I would utilize that as the inspiration to help me get that portrait done. And it did. It showed up years later when I was doing a portrait of my grandmother, and I needed to know, like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? And she wasn't alive, but I had done all of these drawings of her and taken all of these photographs. And then I went back to that one moment while I was going through my lists, and I was like, that's it. The wallpaper, the couch, you know, in the respect of her, it was a chair. But I go back to that constantly. Now, the last and most important component is that I paint from my experience. I would love to, I had a great conversation earlier with Heather about, I would love to be able to turn the audience's eye to something that required empathy or required the audience to, like, let us just step into this person's story to understand where they are. Let's step into their shoes. And for me personally, I've never been able to paint someone else's story and feel that I could do that 100%. So I was like, what do you have? And years ago, one of my instructors, I was really lucky, very fortunate to study Beau Bartlett. And in one of his talks, and this is later after I studied with him, but one of his talks with, I believe it was the Farnsworth Museum, he talks about a quote by Robert Davies: "Let your root feed your crown. Paint from your experience." And I was like, okay. You know, I didn't experience some of what I would like to share with the world, like these stories over here, so we could draw empathy, or, you know, hey, let us look at these stories over here. That's not my story. So how am I going to do this? So I was very much like, if I pull everything from my own experience, maybe I could guide the viewer to, one, have some type of connection with the work, and that would motivate them to question. And down the line, you see the painting, down the line, 2 weeks from now, you're drinking some coffee. Wait, what was that? I just love that painting of hers. And then there was that part, and I wonder why she did that. That reminds me of something. But to question their behavior, their values, something that they've done, something that they maybe haven't done, but to motivate that idea of a change, either outwardly or inwardly, and you know what, I'm going to go back to this now, because I'm not, I hope that I'm making sense. So my approach has been, okay, no, that's not it. Oh, I'm so sorry. Because this is the hardest part, and I've been working, I told Heather, it's been very difficult for me to come up with a way to say this, but using my own experience as a white female, grown up in, you know, upper white, middle class, and sometimes not middle class, but to use all of that experience to create in the viewer a motivation to question why they do things, whether it be these traditional, these traditions that we follow, social mores, and that sort of thing. Now, have I done this yet? On these little incremental levels. But I also told Heather, and I've told this to other people, I'll be 57 this year. I feel like I've got 40 years. So I'm just going to keep working really, really hard, because I know that I will get there. And if you guys have any questions about that later, because I do feel like I just really muddled that one. Good. And here, this is a better way of saying what I've been really interested in. I've been interested in exploring the the attempt by so many of us at trying to strike a balance between the need to be our truest selves, the tether of antiquated social mores and traditions, and how this experience fits into our country's broader social and cultural heritage. So, we're done with this paper, and now I can really dig into the work. And the best example of all of that is right here, called the potluck. What I was doing with this is thinking about the traditions and the social mores we hand down, in particular to girls, to be the lady. And for me, growing up, particularly in the South, being a little lady, it was very important. You know, all of those things that go with being a little lady. Cross your legs at the ankles. We don't yell. You know, please don't interrupt. Some of these things are manners, which yes, you want your children to abide by, but I have a girl, and some of these things, these traditional things that we pass down, don't necessarily fit her authentic self. So I was like, how do I paint that? You know, what does that look like? And I kept thinking about cycles and trying to break a cycle and like going through doors, you know, and having doors close. And then I was like, doors, that's good. And then I was like, what do we do? How do we take things and we give things, and you're in my brain right now with me, so you buckle up. So I was thinking of Tupperware parties and casseroles. I was thinking of Corningware. I was like, what is that, you know, just that generational thing that we take and we give. And I was like, food and potlucks. And so then I got down to the cake. So the cake here is the metaphor for these traditions and social mores, that we so gladly bring and pass, in this case, the female part of my family, down to the next generation. Door is open. We're so happy to receive that. Thank you. And the cake is that metaphor for those things that we're bringing them. And then you've got the women. So you've got a bit of 1930s and 40s here with the costume and the architecture of the house and also the color. You've also got a bit of 1950s, 1960s going on here with the clothes. There are aspects of my mom and my grandmother's here, and there are aspects of my great-grandmother's here. It goes back all the way to there are stripes on the couch. I've got this great picture of my great-great-grandparents, and it's that very somber grandma and grandpa on the couch. But you see that fabulous striped upholstery behind them, and I'm like, okay. And then you've got here and I believe this is called bark cloth. Really, and that was, my grandmother had curtains made of bark cloth, and she also had the seat cushions to the patio outside, because all the patio furniture had these great seat cushions, because that's what you did. And some people still do that now. I don't necessarily do that, and then there's nothing wrong with doing that. but bark cloth. The wallpaper, definitely from my grandmother's house, and you'll see kind of this wallpaper is reiterated. It's also, there's a bit of this in Channel 39, but there's some subtlety business in Channel 39 that I'll explain. And jewelry, and then we get to here. And this is me. I will always depict my true self, like my me self, in stripes. And so this is me, and I have these values. I have all this good stuff in this cake, and I am not really sure about that, if she is going to accept that. And she is like, yeah, nope, my door is closed. I'm forging my own way, and I think that that's just the most authentic way I can be. And so that's really what's behind this, and that is kind of the product of going, you know, how do I paint, you know, these traditions that are blindly handed down, and why don't we question them? And so you kind of, now with that explanation, rocky road that it was, you kind of see the path that got us here. Yeah? Okay. Okay. all right, now I feel like, all right, here we go. So over here we've got, and I'm just going to walk over here if that's okay with the camera. So over here, now this is a little bit different. This actually came straight out of my life. This is called, Your Dad is So Gay. I know, he's a very happy man. And this actually happened. This is my, it was around 2nd, 3rd grade, elementary school playground. Dad had come for a parent day. My mom couldn't come at the time, she was working. And I don't know if he was ever privy to this, but I do remember these, these two girls. Yeah, I'll always remember them because I was like, you know, yeah, I know, he's a really happy man. And something that is so important about this painting and that I painted it because of the reaction I had is, and I don't know how many people are familiar with Amelia Bedelia, but this is what I call definitely one of my Amelia Bedelia moments. And I've had lots of them, and I'm really thankful for those. Those are those moments when you respond in this natural way that is not necessarily childlike, but it is with that freshness of a child, that freshness that kids have. And I was like, why, yes, he is. He is a very happy man. And there have been many other times in my life that I've responded in that, and people are like, that is not what I meant. I'm like, oh, okay, you know, I don't know, but that's what I thought. And so in this painting, I staged it with my daughter. Oh, and that was, you know, she charges me. Yeah, she did that by the hour. And so that was, yeah, she made a mint off this painting. And over here, we've got me in the stripes. Again, that's kind of my real self. And it's really as though I'm watching this, but I'm thinking this. I'm remembering this. That's what, for me, what the figure is. So, and this is my dad, and then this is my grandmother and my great aunt Jenna. Jenna had a son, or has a son. She is no longer with us, but cousin Chris is. And my dad and Chris were cousins, and Chris was also gay. And Jenna and Bess, or I called her Nan, but they, for a greater portion of their life, they worried about what they did to make their sons gay. And in 2004, I was so lucky to go and spend a week with my grandma, take pictures, draw while she sat and read paper or, you know, did the crossword. So I would have these references because I knew eventually paintings would come. And I was able to have this really great heartfelt conversation because it wasn't until then that I even knew that she was like, you know, I wish I had known what I had done to make, you know, Sammy gay. And I was like, man, no. And she was like, and Jenna's worried about Chris. And I said, you didn't do anything. You raised a son, you raised a great human being, super courageous, very strong. And by this time, he was gone. But that was such a good moment. And so they are gone. When I did this painting, like, they are gone, and he is gone. So everyone on the left is gone, and this is this memory of me who's left on the right. So that's kind of where that is. And this is, again, it's a bit of staging, it's a bit using photograph, you know, it's definitely memory, you know, Lakewood Elementary in Dallas, Texas, although I do remember these windows, like, really well. They were kind of crazy. The swing set reiterates another painting, or kind of, it reiterates this image, but it references another painting called My Two Selves on the Backyard Swing. And it was a swing set I had gotten as a child that my dad put together, and it was peppermint striped. It was crazy, I loved it. And so that's why that is that way. And then, and I know we're not there. I don't know if you want to walk around, or if I can talk about Channel 39. Channel 39 that's the one on this wall over here.
Should we walk there?
Sure, if you want to, yeah. We can kind of, and so I think you're seeing now, wow, there's a lot of layers to this. I've always worked in this very layered way. There are some newer works that are here that I just let myself paint some from some of the photos that I just love these moments. For instance, that's Nan and I from 1976. So this layered way has always been the way I've worked. And the work still is layered, but it's interesting, it's taking a different road right now. But this is probably top of, let's see, 2023, I think. And this, man, it's like I'd been waiting for all the puzzle pieces to come together on this. And it wasn't actually that I had like such a specific question like I did with potluck. This was more like, all my life I just wanted to be in a bigger family and I wanted a mom and a dad. How do I paint that? And so when I was younger and I would go to my grandparents, and it was just nothing like it is today. First, we didn't pay for television. Television was just, you turned it on and you didn't, I mean, it was electricity. And you had the stations you had. And at my grandparents, they had Channel 39, and Channel 39 got all the best stuff. We didn't, can you believe it? We didn't have that in Dallas. So we got the Brady Bunch, we got Gidget, we got Andy Griffith, we just got all of this good stuff. The Little Rascals, Batman, Superman, it was awesome. And the live Superman with Clark Kent, yeah, the black and white was great. So, so we would go down there, and I would watch the Brady Bunch, and I just loved it. And I'd be like, oh gosh, you know, I just want us to be, I want to have a big family, and you know, the mom and the dad thing. And as I got older, it really weighed much more heavily on me. So this painting stems out of this idea of this irony, because I so wanted to be part of this family, the Brady Bunch family, and have a big family and all. But the interesting thing was, when Robert Reed died, after he died, it came out that he was gay. And I was like, but that's my family. Like, wait, but I want it, but wait. Well, I'll be darned. You know, I was just like, yeah, like, okay. I mean, I still would like the mom and the dad, but man, it was very, very interesting to me. And so, and irony, I know there's irony there. So that's where this comes from. And my daughter posed for this, but this is me watching, you know, myself be in this family, and you know, the brothers and the sisters and the mom and the dad, and I'm playing with things like, you know, yes, is it a 1970s television? Sure, but it looks like today's televisions because it takes up the entire wall. So I like to play with that, like back in time, present day, back in time, present day. And then when you have a moment, you can come up. And so this is, again, it's this wallpaper that was at my grandmother's, but I have changed the interior motif, and this need for family, I mean, it really, and to have the mom and the dad, and, you know, be like everybody else. It was super, kind of keeping up with the Joneses for myself, but that need was so big, and I was I gravitated to things that showed family. One was, I think it's Freedom of Want, Norman Rockwell's painting of Thanksgiving dinner. And so when you come up, there's this little tiny, took me a while to get this like little bitty, but it is this little bitty dinner table, and people are sitting around it, and you've got the dad at the very end in curtains. And then I collect all of these really great images of like 1950s houses. They have like the floor plan, and they're done in these cool colors. It's one of the resources I get my palettes from, or the color palette for some paintings. And so there's a little home here, and then, you know, all these lines are that Freedom of Want, and then these are little homes, Freedom of Want. The tile is from my grandmother's house. She had an orange ottoman. Oh, it was so cool. This orange leather ottoman, and it had hay or straw. Like that's what it was. And so I don't have that, but we have this ottoman now that was hers, and I just replaced the color. And then you got the stripes, because this is me as a kid, just so wanting to be a part of this. And then sure enough, I mean, I did have a fan. I mean, I did have our dads were similar. That's, I guess, what I was more trying to say. Let's see. Keeping Up with the Joneses is here, kind of here in present day, and nostalgic or vintage idea, visuals, motifs, if you will. And this comes from a story. There's a little excerpt. So my dad wrote out these wonderful biographical short stories before his death. And some of them have made it to the lists because they're just like these little paintings with words. And this one in particular was about when they moved, my grandparents and my dad moved to Fairfield, a little tiny town in between Dallas and Houston. Big picture window in the living room of the house. And at that time, it was really popular to put in some decorative lamp on a table. And it, you know, of course you had the light through the living room, but you wanted everyone to see your decorative lamp. And he in this story, he talks about, and 2 weeks later, the lady across the street, you know, Nan, she put up her lamp. 2 weeks later, lady across the street put up a bigger lamp. And his mom was like, oh. And so I was like, oh, that's it. That's Keeping Up with the Joneses. And at first, in the sketches I have for this, I am pulling a really big television, because in I think in our today, in today's culture, having the next biggest television than your neighbors is probably a really good description of Keeping Up with the Joneses. But I was like, you know, I don't know. That doesn't. I want to keep it resonating, you know, with my dad's story. So I just did a way more ornate lamp. And I'm pulling it along, and this is kind of my mom dress. I'm not sure, I was talking to Heather earlier about this, so I don't think I said this yet, but I have 3 or 4 dresses that have different cuts that really lend themselves to different time periods. And then I can, because of my costume history, I can change out pattern, and I'm a huge seamstress, and I've done lots of costumes, so I know how to, you know, I can alter it so it, you know, fits the generation. And so this is my mom dress, my mom character, kind of updated Donna Reed-ish night, kind of. And so I'm pulling this along because I'm like, this is way bigger than any of these other lamps. Here we go. But the thing that ties it to the contemporary, I mean now, this generation, and I'm not really saying that right, but today's culture is, and I asked Heather about this, so something that's very popular right now in Central Texas and trending with homes is to paint your house white with black trim. And this is one of the things that went down into the lists, the book of lists, and I was like, why are people painting their houses white and then trimming them in black? Like, and then you'll see several houses in a row. And I'm just like, what? Okay, because to me, it lends itself to a comic outline, to an illustration, and it also just, I don't know, it looks like everybody else's house, which I'm like, wow, that's wild. But that is a Keeping Up with the Joneses kind of thing. It also, for me, with the research that I've done on architecture and houses, and you can imagine, I've done a lot of like deep dives down rabbit holes, and one is into all of the subdivisions that were first created right after World War II, and these houses, with being painted white and then outlined in black, really resemble those. And they're really, I mean, I do this because I can see the imagery of these houses just lined out, and they all look similar. It makes me think of the song, Ticky Tacky House, Ticky Tacky, they all look the same. Anyhow, I digress. So that's keeping up with the Joneses. Does anybody have any questions? I would love for y'all to talk, and maybe I should stop. I mean, I would love to answer your questions is what I'm saying, but I know I'm going on.
So do you have, well, obviously this is your first solo exhibit, so you might not, but this is so interesting, the story behind each of them, and it should be written so that it can be shared when you're not here. So are you writing a book?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
But I've got some ideas. I write as I work to note, and normally I do write out something for each painting. This was a bit hard and fast, and also with with what I was telling you earlier today, my time has kind of been scrunched, but normally I have something, and if it's, usually just like maybe a page, but to give those layers to explain behind what each painting is about. I have to say too, because, and when I say like my time is scrunched, there's two things going on here. One, David contacted me, I guess in July, and I was just finishing my kids' camp, so I really didn't get started on all of this until August. And it was incredible. I had said earlier that, I was looking to the fall to push myself in a different direction, and he had come to me with this opportunity, and at first I was like, oh my gosh, oh no, August to November, and I paint this big, and I don't know. And the next morning I woke up and I was like, the universe has given you this as a gift. Take it and paint like there's no tomorrow. And so that's what I did. But in that, he also pushed me to, I painted some things that I just wanted to paint, and they don't necessarily have layers. And that was so exciting. Because I love the layers, and I love how everything, because I can't not paint something, but I was like, wow, this, which is one of my absolute, this is of all of them, this is my favorite one out of the whole batch of the new paintings. And there's 10 new works, since August to November. And this was just my daughter this summer getting ready for, theater camp, and on this day it was Jocks and Nerds Day, and she's very much, I just love her creative sense, and it has been one of those joys, and also one of those like, oh gosh, I'm going to keep my mouth shut and step away because it's my time and you need to do your thing, even though, gosh, I really want to help you with that costume, but no, oh, this is good, and she was like, I got Jocks and Nerds Day, and she's getting ready, and she's in there working with the tape, and she just stuffed her shirt full and, blue taped herself into the shirt with all of this padding. And actually, what she did was, over this shirt, her grandfather gave my husband a Kansas City Chiefs shirt because he loves the Chiefs. And so she wore the Chiefs shirt. So in the painting, I put 05 because that's the day she was born. But I mean, this is my daughter, y'all. All those muscles, like, I'm doing it. I'm doing it my way. And I'm like, okay. And I just, it was so great to paint that. And the layers are, I guess, just my feelings and my love for my daughter.